Hi everyone, and welcome to another of our virtual Yellowstone tours. Today we're going to be doing the section of road between Fishing Bridge and the east entrance to Yellowstone National Park. We're going to be turning right over here. Behind me is the area known as West Thumb. That's the section of road that I've just come up. We're going to be going over Fishing Bridge. It's called Fishing Bridge because in the old days you used to be allowed to fish there, which I suppose is pretty obvious, but you're not allowed to do that anymore. There used to be an old wooden bridge in this area. Now you've got the more modern bridge, and you can still stand and admire the views. You used to be able to do some great cutthroat trout fishing here, but then the supply dried up, probably because that's towards Yellowstone Lake, probably because the area became overfished. We will continue on this road then towards the east entrance to Yellowstone National Park. The road is long, it's about 27 miles long, and there is road construction, as you can see, on this road, so we may have to stop for a while. This is an area where you can get supplies, food, groceries, gas, and that sort of thing. And you can see they've got one of those temporary traffic lights in place, and we may have to stop there for a while. And I do have a confession to make. There's not going to be much narration on this virtual tour today. Number one, there aren't any major thermal features. Number two, although the area is very, very beautiful, we're not really going to come across any major points of interest. You'll find when you come here that there's always road construction going on in Yellowstone. The last, I can't remember, perhaps 4 years, there was a section of road between Norris and Mammoth being done, and conditions were just terrible, as you always had to sit and wait up to half an hour every time you wanted to go up to Mammoth. This year 2020 and next year 2021, we've got Dunraven Pass closed, so the whole area between Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone and Tower Roosevelt, up over one of the most beautiful sections of the park, Dunraven Pass, is closed. One would sometimes see pelicans here, although with all this construction that's very, very unlikely at the moment. Yellowstone Lake on the other side of this new bridge. not something that you guys have to worry about, but the annoying thing is I'm going to have to sit and wait on the way back. The road will soon open up and we'll get great views of the lake on the right hand side. Interesting that it's the beginning of July and there's still snow on those mountains. As I promised you. Quite a windy day today, so there's a bit of chop on the lake. Strong smell of sulfur here, which generally means, of course, that there's thermal features in the area, and that's our crop ahead of us. There are a couple of thermal features, some smaller ones. Some kayaking on Yellowstone Lake. Most years you can take a kayak tour. In addition, interestingly enough, the National Park Service is engaged in a battle to get rid of a certain type of fish that you find in this lake, namely the lake trout. The native fish here is a cutthroat trout. But lake trout were illegally introduced into Yellowstone Lake possibly from nearby Shoshone Lake or perhaps Lewis Lake, which are not too far from us. And they are quite a powerful invasive species in that they started decimating the native cutthroat trout in the lake to the point where, boy, isn't that a great view of the lake as it opens up with the mountains in the background? So they started decimating the native cutthroat trout species. The lake trouts are a lot bigger than the cutthroat trout, and it was having an enormously deleterious effect on the ecosystem around the lake, because not only were the native cutthroat trout dying, but there's various species that rely on the cutthroat trout for their existence. The grizzly bear are perhaps the best known, but then also otters and ospreys. And because there wasn't cutthroat trout for the grizzlies to eat, they would move somewhere else, as was the case with the otter and the osprey, and we wouldn't see them that much in this area. So the Park Service started efforts to get rid of the lake trout. And if you think that's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, well, initially at least, you'd be right. So a number of methods were tried, and I speak a lot more about this in another one of the series. But amongst the methods that they tried were electrocuting the fish. What is that on the road ahead of us there? Is it a... It is a bear. Isn't that a spot of light to see that beautiful grizzly? Sorry, my camera's on a monopod, so it's a little difficult to maneuver. I stopped to get some footage of that grizzly, and there are so many little gnats around. I'm trying to get them off the windshield. I'll probably have to stop a little bit further up the road once I'm in an area where there's not that many of them, and clean the windshield a little better there. And we're continuing on our way past Yellowstone Lake still, and that reinforces something that I always say about Yellowstone. You never know what you're going to see when. I've seen grizzlies lots of times just outside the east entrance, and a few times just inside the east entrance, and that area is known for its grizzlies. I'd never seen a grizzly here before. That doesn't mean that you're not going to see one. And that really was a spot of light. And I'm going to pull over and see if I can't get this windshield clean. And we're on our way again after the windshield cleaning mission, although there's still quite a few of those little gnats around. Gosh, everywhere you go in Yellowstone, you see people fishing. reluctant to open the window again for a while. Let's just take a view of the sun over the water. A turn off shortly, which leads to a nice overlook of the lake from up there. You may like to take it if you do this road. The turn off coming up. Notice all the young lodgepole pine trees growing. There was obviously a fire here, as you can see, and the cones where the seeds are kept of the lodgepole pine trees are pretty darn hard, and they're very difficult to break open, but a source of intense heat will do that, and when the fire comes along it burns all the old growth, all the old trees, and it allows a new forest to grow. It's part of the natural process, and so the fire will cause the cones to spring open, spreading the seeds all over the place, but the fire will also burn the ground, thus making it even more fertile for the new trees to grow. That was very kind of him. White area over there, the paler area. those of you who've seen several of these videos will know that there's likely to have been a thermal area over here that's likely to be sinter that was brought up by geysers when they bring their water up. When the geyser erupts, it brings up minerals with it. Chief amongst them is sinter, which gives the ground its pale appearance. Sense of fire, wasn't it? Watchers of this series will know that those standing dead trees are called snags. Looking at how many of them there are and how few trees are growing, new trees, and how young the trees are. This fire obviously took place relatively recently. Perhaps another bear? Let's get out and take a look. Ah, there she goes, lifting her head now, beautiful. Look at that little cub eating. Getting back on the road, that was a grizzly bear with a cub, and I'll drop some video of that in. This is what I mean about the crowds. This is how you can tell where there is a bear in Yellowstone. You know how to find one? Yep, just look for the crowds. And this area isn't even that well populated a road. This is the road between Fishing Bridge and Cody, as you know. If this were to have occurred, if this grizzly bear were to have been on the upper loop or the lower loop somewhere, the crowds would be significantly worse. Notice how there isn't even a ranger present. And we'll continue on towards the east entrance. After filming 2 grizzly bears, well, 1 grizzly and then 1 sow plus a cub, my battery is almost flat and I may need to change to another camera. Let's see how we go. This camera that I'm using has got a long lens, and just in case I run out, just in case I see another grizzly, I'm going to switch to another one and save what little battery I have left. And I'm continuing this virtual Yellowstone tour with another camera, and fortuitously I happened to pull over at one of the most beautiful spots, I think, in all of Yellowstone. This is Silvan Lake, which means that we're going to be coming across Silvan Pass pretty soon. And if you follow the Yellowstone road reports, gosh, look at that. Isn't that stunning? Snow is still on that mountain. If you ever look at the Yellowstone road reports, you'll see that Silvan Pass is the road up from the east entrance of the park up to where we are now. And in adverse weather in the spring and the fall, it is often closed, and people have traveled all the way to the east entrance of Yellowstone to find that they can't get in, and they have to wait sometimes days for the pass to open. The National Park Service in recent years has been much more aggressive in closing roads when there's a little bit of snow down, and There's a lot more road closures in the spring and the fall than there used to be. East entrance and the northeast entrance to Yellowstone, the scenery just becomes so stunning as you get closer and closer to the entrances, or the way we're going, to the exits. Just over that ridge ahead of us, we're going to be dropping down into Silvan Pass. Elevation 8,530 feet, where you see that level area up there where it says road closed. That's where they used to have a gun, maybe still do, a snow avalanche gun, and they used to set it off to dislodge avalanches so that people wouldn't be caught if snow were to come down naturally. And this is a really steep road. I don't know if you can tell from the video. I don't normally stop when I'm doing these point-to-point virtual tours, but there is an area coming up on our right where the views are pretty good, and it's unlikely that, apart from the trip back, that we'd ever do a virtual Yellowstone tour specifically on Silvan Pass, so I will stop so you can take a look at the views. The sun isn't doing us any favors at the moment, so you can't really see the view up the hill, but it's still pretty spectacular looking down in that direction towards the east entrance. That is the road back to Silvan Lake. Continuing our video after pulling off to give you guys a look at that view. Watch out for rock slides. There are smaller rocks all over the place here today. this road, I'm sure you can understand now why the Park Service, when it's snowing, decides to close it down. Those trees. I know those of you who have watched quite a few of these will know that I say somebody should do a book, a photographic book, on the dead trees of Yellowstone. There's some stunning shapes. For 2 sets of grizzly bears, which took quite a bit of time, but it looks like I'm just going to finish this virtual Yellowstone tour in time before the shadows get too long. We're traveling almost due east, so sooner or later the sun is going to set behind these mountains. much, but look at those mountains ahead of us. Still going just slightly downhill. It's a long climb on the way back. And finally we're coming to Yellowstone's east entrance. Normally I would finish the virtual Yellowstone tour when we get to the end point of the road that we're on, in this case the east entrance. But there is a really cool picnic area and viewpoint just outside the park that I'd like to show you. This part of Yellowstone is also known, well, we're outside Yellowstone, but this part of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem is also known for its grizzly bears. I mentioned earlier that I used to come here to try and find grizzlies to photograph, with some success, I might add. See a road sign directly ahead of us, Cody, 52 miles away. Cody's well worth a visit, incidentally. They are on the national rodeo circuit, so if you can go when they're having that big event, it'll really blow your mind. However, hotels will be sold out and prices will be higher. They do, however, have a recreational rodeo, I think 4 or 5 nights a week during the summer months, and that's a lot of fun if you haven't seen a rodeo before. It's kind of a mom and pop rodeo with the local cowboys and cowgirls taking part, but well worth a visit. And then in addition, Cody is home to, I forget the exact word, it's the Buffalo Bull Museum, the Buffalo Bull Historic Center or something, which is 5 museums in one. And it really is a stunning series of museums. You could literally spend the whole day there, if not longer. And once again, for those of you who may not have been listening, or look at that sign, be bear aware, food storage required. For those of you who may not have been listening as I left the park, I normally end the tour at the end point of the particular route that we are doing, but I'm continuing today until we get to a little picnic spot not too far up the road where I'm going to finish this virtual Yellowstone tour. I've also brought my sack lunch with me, or in this case my sack dinner. It is 6:03, but the sun sets around 9 o'clock. So it should be a beautiful evening next to the river. The temperature is 66, so what's that, probably about 18.5, 19 degrees Celsius. So there should be a nice nip in the air, and it should be a fabulous time to sit next to the river and enjoy my sandwich. Perhaps a bear will join me if I'm lucky. to Cody and you've got a bit of free time and you'd like to stop somewhere, remember it's just near the old ski resort, and so often I come here and there's nobody here. And you know what I mentioned before about the bears, and here's a little exhibit telling you to be careful of them and be aware of them and store your food. Once again, the sun's a little in our way, but isn't this just the most glorious spot? And guys, on that note, thank you for joining me on this virtual Yellowstone tour. If you enjoy our virtual Yellowstone tours, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. See you in Yellowstone. Walking down to my picnic spot next to the river.